Hi, and welcome to a demonstration and instruction of documenting the results of your GFO workshop. Today, I'll guide you through the various steps of how to fill the pre-post form out with your data, as well as what to conclude based on that data. To begin, let's just take a look at the sheet itself. We'll notice there's a few different tabs along the bottom, and throughout there's a lot of different graphs and infographics with a lot of different numbers that are going to be auto-filled as we continue along. As we go through, we'll fill out each of these items, and most of the time they'll actually fill out themselves through some various algorithms put in through the template. So you can see this is the main section we'll be working on in the report area. There will be a spot where we'll eventually put our raw data, as well as a spot where some of the analysis is done. So we're going to go ahead and start taking a look at the top of our template. At the very top, you'll see the summary section, and we're just going to go ahead and fill that out real quick. Here will be just some basic information about your actual event. So first off, the presenter's name. For this one, I'm just going to write in my own name for the example. After that, the role is going to be what role the presenter had. Your options for this will be Minds Team, Champion, or Change Agent. For our example here, I'll mark it as Minds Team. After that, it'll ask about the date. I can just leave it the same here. And then after that part, it's going to ask about the format, which is going to be which your template is, whether it's the student or the faculty version. Since we're using the student template, I'm going to leave it as the student, but if you're using the faculty template, you'll want to change it to that. After it, you're going to want to fill out what venue your event was at. This one, I'll just put down School of Mines for the example. And lastly, it's going to ask about the attendance of your event. Note that this isn't the actual number of responses you got, but the actual number of attendees for your event. Hopefully you got this number through something like a head count or a reservation system. For our example, we had 54 attendees. After this, you'll also see the narrative summary section, but we won't need to worry about this until much later. We're going to go ahead now and move on to the raw data section. As you can see here, I have a set of raw data from a presentation, sanitized, removing the first and the last name of any responders, though we still have the presenter's name in place. At this point in time, you'll want to make sure your raw data matches in the same kind of format mine is, based off of the SurveyMonkey style. Mine will have things like the first name and the last name in the certain places they are, as well as things like the start time and the end date over in C and D, and throughout matching up your questions in the correct place, like for Q, R, S, T, and so on, making sure each question is correctly put, as well as anything about the feedback sections. So going ahead here, what we'll want to do first and foremost is we're going to want to just look through our raw data and try to see if we can find any responses that look almost all the way incomplete. At the bottom of this set of raw data, we have a few responses right here, which after this question, they didn't seem to answer anything. We can go ahead and just delete these ones. Again, these shouldn't be any responses where they have a majority filled out and only have an occasional blank, but only the responses that are almost completely all the way blank, like these ones shown right here. So I'll go ahead and just delete these really quick, and that'll leave us with the rest of our responses. A couple of these will have a few little blanks throughout, or even might be half done in certain areas, but that's okay. At this point in time, we're now going to want to count all of these responses we currently have. As we can see right here, it goes down to 52, but we have two header columns. So we'll have a total of 50 responses here. At this point in time, make a note of your number. In my case, this will be 50, as this number will be used later on in our template. There's still a few more things we need to look for throughout all of our responses. The next one we're going to tackle is going to be looking for any half-done responses. These are responses that attempted a thorough, full-out response, but had a clear stoppage point. We'll want to keep these for use of the feedback for later on, but we don't want to include them in the full analysis. So let's go looking through our raw data here, and we can see at the very bottom, we'll have three responses that stopped right around column Y, but for the first part had thorough data. We'll want to keep these, but we won't want to use them for the full analysis piece. Note, half done isn't going to include something that's just missing feedback, like this response up here, which has everything else done. So what we'll want to go ahead and do is we'll just want to take these last three rows, we want to copy them and then paste them and then delete them from right here. leaving just a little bit of space between them and the remaining pieces of our data. So that way they're separate for later use, but not to be included in the full analysis. Another type of thing we need to look for is for any time issues within the response. These are going to be responses that were submitted in under 7 minutes. So you'll want to go up to 3F, click that cell, and we're going to want to put in an Excel formula. You'll want to put in equals D3 minus C3. This will give you a time amount for how long the response took between when it was started and when it was finally submitted. Occasionally, the format will be a little odd for your time amount, so in this case, you'll want to double click on the cell, go down to Format Cells, go to Time, and then you'll want to click the 7th option there. I already have mine set to the correct option, so we're just going to go ahead and move on from there. At this point, once you have that in cell 3F, we can just go ahead and click that cell, and we're going to want to drag down through all of those responses, excluding those half-done ones. These will put in that time number for the remaining ones. As we can see throughout, none of our responses came in under 7 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and keep the rest of these. This data should now be good to go to be put into the template. With our data now organized and in a usable format, we're going to go ahead and add it to the template. So back in your raw data section, you'll want to click on cell 1A, and you just want to go ahead and we're going to copy through all of our worthwhile responses, excluding those half-done ones we set aside for later. So we'll go right here, and we're going to want to copy these. Perfect. And then we'll want to go over to our template, to the raw data tab. There will always be a little bit of data here, and so we're just going to write over it. We'll want to go to cell 4A, and then we'll want to paste. This will change up those responses and overwrite them. Occasionally, you'll have a couple more of the previous responses at the bottom, in which case you can just delete those. Our data should now be in place in this raw data tab through and through. You can double check here, make sure your headers are matching up with the headers above it. We'll go ahead now and move to the data analysis tab just to double check for any sort of errors or problems. In here, if there's extra data in the raw data tab, you'll sometimes get error messages at the bottom. You can just go ahead and delete those. Another thing you're going to want to look for is throughout some of these numerical responses, occasionally there's a divide by zero error. If this ever happens, you can just overwrite it with a 0%. Perfect. Everything seems to be good through our raw data and data analysis tabs. The last thing we'll need to do here is we're going to want to go back to the report tab, to our responses, and that number you saved earlier before we removed the half-done responses, you're going to want to put that in this one right here, cell 20D. For me, that was 50. And that'll change up some of our graphs and some of our other data. At this point, we can now start tackling some more aspects of the report, particularly with response to the tables. So here, we're going to want to just do some simple edits. With our raw data in place, it edited the tables and moved some of the numbers around. So you'll just need to go through and update your graphs, making sure the numbers are in a usable format. So for example, right here, we can just move these numbers a little bit around. You want to just make them so they're visible as well as in order. So for this graph right here, we can move the pink down, lower, and then we'll want to leave blue higher because blue is still higher in this case. So we can move it to the side, and then we'll want to move the orange down. Perfect. And then with these numbers, it'll be a similar case where you'll want to leave it in the order of the end lines here. So green at the bottom, orange next, and then we have blue and pink tied, so it won't matter exactly which order we put the two in. But just make them separate so that way the graph looks a little nicer, you know? Perfect. Yeah, you're just going to want to go through all of your graphs and make it look like those. With our graphs filled out, we can begin to use the data from those to fill out some of our other elements of the template. First and foremost, we can take a look here at the pre-post gain section. And we're actually going to want to look at the gain to comparison numbers as well as the normalized gain to that comparison number. In this case, For all of our things, we'll want to put a lower than, similar to, or a higher than answer. Traditionally, we consider similar to about within 10%. So in this case, because gain to the comparison as well as normalized gain to its comparison are both within that 10% range, I'm going to leave it as similar to. After that, looking at the pre-post questions fact-based question, we'll want to take a look at the post numbers in comparison to the compare numbers. For this one, we can mark it as higher than, as throughout we can see that those post numbers are traditionally higher than the compare numbers. The next one for pre-post questions attitudes, we're going to want to look at gain to compare. So that'll be this numbers versus these numbers. So we can go ahead and leave it as similar to, as all of these are very similar to one another. For the next one, we'll take a look at the percent shifting to agreement. And again, we can see these numbers are pretty close to one another, so we can just leave it as similar to. After that, for the workshop feedback, this one will be a little different than the other ones. We're going to want to take a look at the bars on the graph here and see where they rank in comparison to the stable line on the number 2. In general, we can see here that most of our bars are reaching, if not exceeding. So I'm going to mark it as greater than, but add in the exception case with discuss with peers. Note for any of your other responses here, if there's just one category that sticks out different than the other ones, you can write that as a separate thing at the bottom of the question. Lastly, for the first-time attendees, we're going to want to take a look at the first-time bars versus the not first-time bars. And in general here, we can see that it's greater than the repeat attendees. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in, greater than the repeat attendees. Awesome. And then also, if occasionally throughout your answers, sometimes one of the cell colors won't match, we can go ahead and remark it so that way it fits in with the remainders. This should be all you need to do for all of your graphs as well as all of the questions for the graphs. At the bottom of the template on the report tab, we'll find the next thing we need to work on, which is all about the feedback from your event. Here we'll notice that there's a couple different things between our 3 different forms of feedback, which were from the 3 questions: what was best about the workshop, what could be improved, and then lower is the other comments or suggestions area. I've gone ahead and added a couple extra lines to all of these sections just in preparation, but you'll do this as it comes up for yourself. We'll notice as well here the sizing for our different pieces. For what was best about the workshop, we have 6 cells length, whereas for the what could be improved, we only have 5. And then though other comments has a large room, we typically like to keep it to 6. So to go ahead and do this, we'll want to add an extra sheet to our template just to make it easier. I've gone ahead and added this already. It'll just be a blank one, something that'll be nice and easy to work on. We'll go ahead and tackle the first set of comments first and foremost. So you'll want to go back to your raw data tab and you'll want to scroll over to column AF, which is where the first set of feedback was, including the what was best about the presentation. Here you'll want to copy the entire column. This might include some of your removed responses from earlier, as sometimes they'll still have the feedback, which could be used for this section still. We'll go back to our template and then we'll just paste all of this. First and foremost, we can just delete some of these empty rows, as we won't need them at all. Perfect. We can also delete the headers as well. So now that we're here, we'll have all of our data in place for that specific question. And back on the report sheet, we can remember that this part will have a 6 width. And so we'll want to take a look at each individual section, seeing how long it is. For this first one, we see it's going past 6 columns, and it's actually reaching into that 7th. So first thing we'll do is we'll just want to go ahead and we'll want to insert another row beneath it. We'll go ahead then and scroll to the 6 deep and go down by 2. With this part, we'll then want to go up here to merge and center, wrap text, which is just above it, and then left align it. Doing this, we've made our comment into 6 cells width, though a couple rows deeper. We'll want to go ahead and go through each one of these parts, doing it the exact same way, making it so that the feedback will fit within 6 columns. I've gone ahead and finished the remaining of the formatting for this data. So now that we have it all in place, we can go ahead and just scroll through copying all of our data points here. So copy those, and then we'll want to go back to the report tab, and at the first row and first column of the what was best about this workshop, you just want to paste. In doing this, all of those data points and all of those responses will get put in the correct format here. At this point, you'll also want to double check, make sure you didn't need any extra rows and that your data is correctly formatted within this template. If you need some more rows, you'll want to go ahead and delete these responses in this part of the columns, and then add those extra rows, going back and then repasting from your sheet 1. Now we can go ahead and do the next question, which is the what can be improved. We'll want to go back to our sheet 1, and we'll actually want to delete all of these rows as they're formatted a little differently now. We can go back now to our raw data tabs and go to column AG, which has all of the information about the question, what 1 or 2 aspects of the presentation could be improved. We'll want to do a similar thing to the last question, which is copy this entire column, head back to sheet 1 on the report template. We'll want to paste that, and now we'll have all of these responses here. We'll go ahead and remove the headers, remove the empty rows, and then go through marking them and making them fit in the correct format. Remember, for this question, we'll need it to be 5 columns wide as opposed to 6 like the previous time. We'll go ahead and do that right now. Perfect. Now with these responses in the correct format, we can go ahead and move them into the correct spot of the template. A couple quick notes though, and reminders. Again, to format these responses, you'll want to use merge and center, followed by wrap and then left align. You'll also see for these ones, a couple of them have an extra line associated with them. And these are just because sometimes the responses, when they're very close to that end of that last cell, they'll just need an extra line to fit completely in the format. This will be done just through some trial and error on your part as you enter in the cells on your own sheet. Perfect, so we'll go ahead and we can just copy these, and then we'll move them over a bit to the report tab, and then put them in by pasting. And awesome, now they're in place there. We'll go ahead now and just finish the last section of responses in the other comments. Heading back to sheet 1, we can go ahead and just delete all of these rows as we won't need them anymore. And then we'll go back to our raw data over to column AL. You'll want to copy that, head back over to your template under the sheet 1 tab, and then paste these in place. We'll go ahead and format these again now. For formatting these other comments, I once again removed the headers and all the empty rows. Another reminder here, for our other comments, we want our responses to be 6 cells wide, which thankfully all of these ones fit into. So at this point now, we'll go ahead and just like the other ones, we'll copy, and then we'll move over to the report tab into this cell right here at B188, and then paste. And awesome, this should be all of your feedback in place in the correct format in the template. You can go ahead at this point and remove any extra rows if need be around the template, as well as take some time and just read through all of these notes and try to get an idea of how the presentation went on all. This will be important for our next step. And finally, the last thing we'll need to accomplish for a report is the narrative summary, which will be found at the very top of the report tab. Here, you'll just want to throw in a general overview of the report in your presentation in full. These can include things like the various results from your tables, as well as some of your graph results. You'll want to throw in things about each of the comparison values, as well as things about your feedback, what the viewers thought was best, what could be improved, and just any other general comments. Once you have that all written in, your report should be good to go. Thank you for watching this video and taking the time to fill out your report. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to GFO, and thank you.